Instead, he took her to a veterinarian after the alien physicians abandoned her and left her without anything. The vivid turquoise glow of Ryan Mercer's wide shoulders hunched as the alien hospital cast spooky shadows across the empty back alley, trudged wearily along the broken pavement, battling the late-night chill. Another 12-hour shift kept there. He was bone-exhausted and his muscles ached from the city's atmospheric controls. For the convenience of his tiny flat, the hospital towered over him like a chilly, metal-gleaming monolith of efficiency, antiseptic, angles completely devoid of warmth. Ryan had always discovered something despite the medical wonders that were accomplished within disturbing aspects of the location. The clinically detached manner in which the Vexillian physicians moved their six-fingered hands, exact but dispassionate. He was likely drawn to a clatter coming from the service entrance. He should continue walking and take a shower when he gets home, because another disposal drone is broken. Remove the dirt from the day and possibly get some rest before his next shift, but something drew him in the direction of the sound. He saw an abandoned shopping cart, the kind that the homeless use, out of some feeling he couldn't identify. Move their little belongings, but this one has something completely different. What the hell? Ryan mumbled, carefully approaching. The individual within was coiled in a fetal form, quivering fiercely, and it wasn't human at all. Was instantly visible through the delicate, nearly translucent skin that appeared to absorb and reflect the neon. Light as Ryan as they got closer, the creature moved a little, and a stream of silvery white hair fell over the cart's edge. "Hey!" the figure turned as he said, "Are you okay?" Ryan's breath held in his throat. She was humanoid, definitely. But she had a beautifully shaped face with high levels of beauty that made his heart skip a beat. Cheekbones and a little pointed chin. But her eyes were what really caught his attention. They said I was too sick, remarked the large almond-shaped, glowing turquoise object's insides. With wind-like whispers through crystal chimes, she said, "Not worth their care." Her thin fingers gripped Orion, looked at the back entrance of the hospital, a thin gown that did little to shield her from the night air. His chest was burning with rage. The Vexillians were known for their highly developed medical technology, but they were also notorious for their brutal cost-benefit evaluations. If a patient's therapy surpasses their estimated worth to society, who abandoned you here? He insisted on removing his jacket and covering her quivering body with it. The physicians, her eyes were filled with unshed tears when she stated that my situation was terminal resource inefficient. Ryan ran a hand through his dark hair, thinking about his tears and his nowhere to go. Choices he couldn't simply abandon her here. It wasn't really an option. However, he wasn't a doctor, he was only a maintenance technician. Then it dawned on him that he wasn't a human doctor, but Kazara said, "What?" Her voice was hardly audible. "I know someone who could be helpful. He's not your typical veterinarian. In fact, he's an Arcturan treats." Ryan was aware of how it sounded, but Kazara had a history of taking up cases for non-human creatures. Wouldn't touch he's clever, but he's a crazy person. The extraterrestrial woman's Ryan, an animal veterinarian, nodded as his eyes widened. "I know that sounds ridiculous, but Kazara has a deeper understanding of xenobiology, more than any physician I've ever encountered, and more significantly, he never turns away patients." She remained silent for a while. She looked at his face for a time before nodding barely perceptibly. "I have no options," Ryan inquired, carefully removing her from the cart. "What's your name?" Weighed nearly little in his arms, yet she exuded an oddly comforting warmth. "Vonra," she responded with her silvery voice, despite her seeming weakness. Hair cascading down his arm. "My name is Vanra." "I'm Ryan," he said, further encircling her. "Hold on tight, Vonra. Kazara's clinic is about 20 minutes from here," he said, snugly in his jacket, as they walked away. From the hospital, Ryan couldn't help but observe how her fingers curled trustingly and how well she fit against his chest. Something ferocious and protective awoke within him as it soaked into the fabric of his shirt, conviction that, if he had anything to say about it, This lovely abandoned creature would not perish tonight. As they moved into the alien district, past the occasional late-night cellar, the streets were almost deserted, or clumsy bar patron. A few strange looks were directed at them, but the sight of a human carrying an alien wasn't unusual enough to justify intervention in a metropolis as diverse as New Phoenix. Why? The quiet was broken by Vonra's kind voice. Why are you assisting me? Ryan, as they turned onto a more peaceful street with modest stores, they thought about the question. Because it's the right thing. Her turquoise eyes scrutinized him, as he eventually answered. And because no one deserves to be thrown away like garbage. With a ferocity that left him feeling oddly vulnerable. Humans are incomprehensible. Ryan might have been admitted by some of your doctors. But not everyone shares that opinion. In any case, I'm simply a person who fixes things that break a ghost of a smile. I'm not a doctor. Ryan gazed down at her and caressed her lips, asking, Am I something broken to be fixed? Despite her situation, he noticed the quiet dignity in her face and felt something change within of him. No, he murmured quietly. Kazara's clinic was situated between a Martian noodle restaurant and a pawnbroker, and she said, You're someone who deserves a chance. Holographic pictures of diverse alien creatures adorned its facade. Some of them were familiar to Ryan, while others were so bizarre that defied categorization. Despite the late hour, the sign above the door flashed, All species welcome. In 12 distinct languages. Ryan moved Vonra's weight in his arms while the hour lights inside him burned warmly and used his elbow to press the entry chime. A voice from inside shouted, Medical emergencies don't respect. Business hours, do they? The door opened, revealing Kazara's entire 7-foot body. The Arcturan vet had amber eyes and tawny fur with black streaks, giving him the appearance of a bipedal cat, appeared to capture every nuance and a constantly amused look. Tonight, he wore a gaudy Hawaiian shirt that was stretched Ryan Mercer, wearing what looked like human pajama bottoms across his large chest. What brings you to my modest establishment at this unholy hour? Kazar's whiskers twitched with pleasure. Ryan's attitude instantly changed to one of professional worry as his eyes fell on the bundle in his arms. Ryan trailed Kazara through the examination room, too crowded waiting area behind terrariums with critters that pumped with life and aquariums filled with exotic fish bioluminescence. The examining room had equipment Ryan had never seen before, and it was startlingly modern. Kazara placed her on the table and told him to wash his paws in a human hospital. Sonic. Clean her and explain what transpired. Ryan placed Vonra down gently. As he listened, Kazara's tail whipped violently as he described how he had discovered her abandoned outside the Vexillian hospital. Barbaric, mumbled the Arcturan. Efficient maybe, but barbaric. I'm Kazara, and I'm going to examine you now, he said softly as he turned to face Vonra. Vonra's azure eyes flitted from Kazara to Ryan, who gave her an approving look. Yes, she murmured, encouragingly nodding. Kazara worked with unexpected care, for his size by taking readings with a portable scanner, and asking Vonra Ryan stood close by, curious about her symptoms and yet hesitant to leave her side. Kazara said, as she studied the scanner's screen, Interesting. You're Lamidian, aren't you? I've only treated one of your sort previously. Vonra acknowledged that the southern archipelago is the source of the... Kazara tapped something into his medical tablet. And your blood contains bioluminescent indicators. You have amazing, though rare, cascade syndrome is treatable. Hope flared across VR's delicate features. The Vexillians, Kazara interrupted the Vexillian. Doctors. He flicked his ear dismissively, saying, are great surgeons but bad healers. He went to Ryan, saying, I can help, because they only perceive cost and probability, not possibility. Ryan crossed his arms. But I need an element that's hard to get through traditional means. What kind of phosphorescent algae from the deep, sea vents of Europa as a component? Substances that can help her condition. Kazara's whiskers drooped a little, but sadly, they're heavily, as Ryan echoed, his brow furrowing. The only way to get it quickly would be through the black market. Kazara acknowledged that it sounds risky, but without it, her condition will deteriorate quickly. The Villians were correct about that section Ryan examined. There was something about Vanra's glowing eyes as she watched him, caused his chest to tighten in an inexplicable way. "I'll get it," he replied firmly, and Kazara nodded without surprise. "Believed you could mention that I am aware of someone who can assist a trader named Dex. He runs his business out of the Nebula, an infamous nightclub in the alien district that attracts a diverse clientele. With the illegal activities that took place in its murky corners, I'll provide her with something to help her feel better." Kazara continued to prepare an injection for the time being, so she can stay here tonight. "She'll accompany me to my place," Ryan replied, startling himself with his fervor. Kazara's amber eyes scanned him inquisitively before switching to Vanra, who was observing Rin with awe. "Very well," the vet said. "But she'll need these medications every 6 hours," he continued, a knowing smile playing at the edges of his feline mouth. "And she must be warm," he said, passing Ryan a tiny case. "Lumidians have difficulties controlling their body temperature while they're sick." Following thorough guidance from Kazara, Ryan assisted Vonra in standing up. She swayed a little, so he automatically put an arm around her waist to keep her upright. He was suddenly startled by contact. Her warm skin appeared to pulse with a faint force that made his. She said, leaning toward him, "Thank you," her fingertips tingling. "For not leaving me." "Oh, I wouldn't," Ryan answered. Her silvery hair smelled somewhat of ozone and something sweeter like night, and she was instantly conscious of how near she was. "I couldn't see the blossoming flowers." Kazara cleared his throat, clearly amused. Handed Ryan a tiny vial and said, "I'll call Dex. Come back tomorrow evening. He'll meet you here. We'll aid in her sleep." And Ryan's amber eyes glowed naughtily like Lumidians. "Remember that they react to emotional energy and are sensitive." Ryan requested a hover cab because it was getting colder, pulling Vonray close to him for warmth. While they waited, she glanced, stared at him, her face glowing ethereally in the artificial light of the metropolis. "Your friend is," Ryan laughed and said, "unusual. Most species find humans unremarkable. Kazara is not. He finds people to be fascinating, saying we're beautifully erratic." "You are," Vonra concurred, her eyes kind of lingering on his face. That caused his heart to race. "I sense your worry and resolve. It's really severe." Ryan recalled Kazara's final remarks of Lumidians being sympathetic and blushed with shame. Could she perceive the other feelings he was experiencing? Attempting to ignore, he was spared from having to answer when the hovercab came. As they took the rear seat, Ryan became intensely aware of Vonra's thin body pressing against his. It would be a long night for them at every point of contact. Ryan lived in a small but cozy one-bedroom apartment in a pre-war structure that had been remodeled, included wooden flooring and real brick walls. As he entered the access code, he became acutely aware of how unprepared he wasn't much. He murmured sheepishly as the door slid wide, but it was for guests, especially one as ethereal as VRA. Vanra entered the house with glowing eyes, taking in everything. The wall of actual books, which is rare in the digital age, the mismatched furniture, and the partially assembled atmosphere. She remarked, "It's just a wonderfully human," with parts of a regulator strewn all over his dining table. Ryan grinned strangely at her melodic voice, which had so many different textures and characteristics. Happy with her evaluation, "But let me find you something more cozy to wear. That hospital gown isn't very comfortable." He vanished into his bedroom and came back wearing a pair of drawstring trousers and a soft grey t-shirt. These Vonra accepted the clothing with a nod of gratitude. "But they're clean." "Your kindness is," she said, pausing as if she was trying to find the appropriate phrase. "Unexpected. What's surprising?" Ryan turned to give her solitude as she asked. She responded, Humans have a reputation. Her voice momentarily muffled as she, self-interested, volatile, unpredictable, she said, pulling the garment over her head. Ryan chuckled. Well, 2 can turn around now. Out of 3 isn't bad, Ryan said, and his breath. He wasn't prepared for the impact of seeing Vonra dressed like this. The t-shirt draped loosely on her slim figure, slipping over one shoulder to expose skin that appeared to glitter subtly in the dim light of the apartment. The sweatpants were pulled up at the ankles and waist several times. Is it better? He asked, in a voice. She nodded, but then abruptly staggered, buckling Ryan with her knees. Whoa, easy there, he whispered, supporting her weight and skin as he sprang forward and caught her before she could fall. Too hot, let's get you to the couch, felt warm against his. And as he assisted her, Ryan was alarmed to see that she was having trouble breathing and that her skin was blazing intensely inside, erratically pulsing light. What's going on, Vonra? His voice was tinged with panic. My body's energy control is failing, she gasped, and the O cycle is speeding up. As he prepared the injection, Ryan groped for the prescription Kazara had given him, his hands shaking. This should help. Yes, it will slow down the progress she made. But I need something to keep things stable. Ryan's thoughts were racing with energy fluctuations, and that was something he was aware of. Regulating energy systems was his actual responsibility. He replied, wait, as a thought began to shape. I might be able to help. He hurried to his workshop and gathered parts from his thin filaments of conductive material, a thermal regulator capacitor, and half-finished project substance. He put together a primitive but useful energy modulator with concentrated effort, saying, this is designed to turn to Vonra's side, he clarified. Stabilize atmospheric regulators during power surges. If I calibrate it to your until the medication takes action, biorhythms may assist balance your energy output. Vonra watched him in awe as he changed the settings. Ryan, you know about energy systems, said, carefully putting the gadget next to her heart. This could feel weird. Venra gasped as he turned on the modulator. Her back arched slightly. Her skin's irregular pulsations eventually stabilized the glow, making it more consistent with a gentle moonlight shine that lighted. Her features are working. She exhaled, and Ryan let out a sigh as her eyes widened in relief. Thank God you frightened me. There, since I had no idea that people might also be afraid of others, Vonra muttered, quietly examining his features with fresh interest. Of course we can, Ryan said. She smiled slightly and said, you're dangerous. She was shocked by the stories others were telling about us, so erratic that your feelings become too intense. What do you think now? Ryan asked, abruptly conscious of their proximity and the way her brilliance cast. I believe her voice fell to a whisper as she described everything in a soft, personal light. Believe they understated the potential fascination of that heat. As though in response to her remarks, the glow underneath patterns of light danced across her body like shifting constellations in a live sky as her skin became more intense. Ryan whispered, you're gorgeous. Vonra's eyes widened. You're obviously glowing like the northern lights when you observe the patterns, she said in awe. Most species can't sense our brightness this way. It's how my people express our innermost feelings. At this moment, she looked down at the whirling patterns on her skin, and her cheeks are currently flushed a deeper shade of blue. The phrase, I'm expressing attraction, hovered between them, packed with potential attraction. Ryan's mouth dried up abruptly, and I could tell you were feeling sentimental. Vonra acknowledged that the energy is seductive. It's so raw and colourful that we Lumidians perceive. She looked for a comparison between your feelings and colours and textures. Ryan tentatively reached out, risky but alluring, like touching a star. May's glowing patterns on her arm were just above his fingertips. When his fingers touched her, she nodded, her gaze never leaving his face. a shock of feeling between their skins. The patterns of light jumped and… Oh! Vonra exhaled as her eyes swirled in response to his touch, like water reacting. To a magnetic field, Ryan asked, worried. What is it? His eyes widened. I've never wounded her. We can share energy, she said in awe-filled words. It's rare even among my own kind to find such resonance with another being. As she traced the line of his jaw with her thin fingertips, Ryan felt a nice warmth where she touched him. She murmured, this connection, as though sunlight were pouring straight into his veins. Ryan buried his face in her palm and said, it's precious and sacred to my people. Overtaken by feelings he was unable to identify, a strong blend of yearning and something. Stay with me tonight, he whispered quietly. Not just now, but deeper and more meaningful. Because you're ill, because I want you to observe Vonra's light, patterns. Yes, she replied, her skin pulsing once brilliantly, lighting up the room like a silent lightning strike. Only I will stay. Ryan's shutters let in morning light, which cast the bed where he and Vonra were intertwined had golden stripes. The night had been a life-changing experience for both of them, other that went beyond physical limits, where energy had passed between them and created feelings that neither had before encountered. For Ryan, it was similar to touching lightning, without the discomfort. For Vanra, their connection had materialized as dazzling constellations, and the only feeling that ran through every nerve was ecstasy. Ryan watched her sleep, seeing patterns of light beneath her skin that were more intricate and exquisite than any she had ever revealed. Her silver-white hair was now in a relaxed state of mellow radiance, stretched like spilled moonlight on his pillow. He had never felt so bonded to another human or not, seemed as though a part of him had identified something essential and genuine in her. His commune hummed. Ryan grabbed for it cautiously, so as not to disturb Vonra Kazara's feline visage, insistently on the nightstand. Ryan's whiskers were twitching with anxiousness. Thank you, Stars. Ryan sat up immediately, aware of what was going on, and replied, you must move now. Vonra's energy signature has been linked to your district by Vexillian authorities, who are currently conducting a sweep, asserting that she is a public health concern and has evaded quarantine Kazara's ambers. Eyes furrowed, but it's just bureaucratic bullshit to hide their carelessness. How long do we have? Minutes? Maybe they have enforcement power. Kazara's picture flickered as he made his way around his clinic, block by block, to reach the spaceport docking bay 94. In 40 minutes, a freight transporter will depart for Europa. The pilot is a buddy who will transport you to your destination. Yes, two birds, one stone. Kazara's whiskers are in Europa, which is where the algae is, twisted with grim humor. Well, I've sent the required paperwork to your account and added credits to it. The communication terminated, and when Ryan looked around, Vonra had already woken up. Sitting up, I heard her say, my turquoise eyes are wide with concern. The t-shirt she was wearing, they're coming for me. Ryan was already there when his t-shirt fell off one shoulder. We're leaving immediately, so Vanra crawled out of bed and grabbed a duffel bag and packed it with necessities. Despite her condition, Ryan, I can't urge you to move fluidly since you're not questioning. He interrupted, tossing her a set of clothes. A simple jumpsuit he'd bought on a whim but never worn. It would fit her well, but it's better than the enormous t-shirt I'm giving him. They looked at each other across the room, and Vonra's skin's glowing patterns revealed a deeper understanding between them than words could express. Last night she pulsed brilliantly once before becoming steady, whispered, what transpired between us would be regarded as a bond in my world. Ryan took a moment during his packing to establish the foundation of a lasting relationship. And how do you feel about that? She said, her words weighing heavily. A grin twisted her lips, changing her expression. I sense that the cosmos possesses odd and amazing schemes occasionally. Ryan took 3 steps across the room and gathered her in his arms. The now familiar rush of emotional energy surged between them. When this is over, We'll talk about those plans, he vowed, pressing, but right. Now we need to run. They hurriedly dressed Ryan, putting his forehead to hers, collected the drugs Kazara had given him and his homemade energy modulator, which had shown more successful than he could have imagined. As Vanra walked about the apartment, he saw that her strength appeared to have increased, motions more certain. You're looking great. He saw your vitality. She described a little blue tint to her cheeks. Last night, it gave me more strength. When she said, human vitality is remarkable, Ryan felt a wave of pride, contentment that he had assisted in her recovery and protection of her. Good. You'll need your strength. They were both frozen when they heard a forceful pounding at the door. The enforcement section phoned. Ryan gestured for the Vasilian Health Authority to open the mechanical voice. Vanra mouthed a whispered fire escape as he headed toward the bedroom. Another, louder knock. This time, life signs were found. Either open right away, or we'll force our way in. Following Von Rowe to the bedroom window, Ryan picked up the duffel bag. The metal fire escape clanged slightly as they climbed down, the sound seeming unnaturally loud in the stillness of the morning. Ryan heard the characteristic hiss of his apartment door being pried open above them. They arrived in the alley as a yell came from above, and all units converged as subjects fled via an outside passage. Run. Ryan took Vonra by the hand, and they ran through the back alleyways. Ryan was aware that the spaceport was 15 blocks away from his late-night job returns. It would typically take them 20 minutes to walk there, but if they hurried, they could arrive in 10. They came out into a large thoroughfare. Breathlessly, Ryan called down a hovercab and said, "Spaceport," as they fell into the rear seat. "Fast as you can." The four-wheeler driver watched them with polished copper that resembled skin. Ryan responded, in an attempt to seem suspicious while running from something in the rearview mirror and being late for a transport. The tone made a doubtful clicking sound, but drove into traffic through the back, despite his beating heart. Window. Ryan saw two Vexillian policemen in their recognizable white uniforms coming out of... Actually, Ryan leaned forward, eyeing the street in an alley. "There's an extra 50. The driver's 4 eyes blinked in time. Credits if you take the scenic route." Vonra snuggled into Ryan as the cab veered onto a side street. "I've never been a fugitive before," she muttered, her body quivering a little. "First time for everything," Ryan said, sounding more confident than he actually was. She looked up at him, and he put an arm around her shoulders, pulling her in. "We're going to be okay, I promise." "You hardly know me, so why risk everything?" she asked, her turquoise eyes scanning his face. By any reasonable standard, Ryan thought that what he was doing was crazy, throwing away his house and his work, perhaps his future for a person he had only met a few hours prior, but because it feels I see someone worth fighting for when I look at you, he replied at last. The patterns of light beneath Ryan somehow deciphered Vonra's skin, shifting into elaborate spirals that conveyed intense emotion. "In my culture, we have a saying that stars don't question why they shine," she added quietly. As the cab navigated the early traffic, Ryan grinned and tightened his arm around her. Things just are, transporting them to an unknown future that felt somehow perfect, and the spaceport combined with morning traffic dock workers unloading a dozen travelers' worth of cargo while merchants set up stalls. Ryan held Vonra close as they made their way across the congested main concourse, species rushing to catch departures. Through deliberate effort, her luminosity faded to almost nothing, yet her beautiful features and silvery hair still attracted Docking Bay 94. Ryan muttered as he looked at the digital directory with interest. We had 15 minutes at the East Terminal, and they moved swiftly but cautiously to avoid the uniformed port security guards who might be warned to keep an eye out for them. Ryan froze as they turned a curve in the direction of the East Terminal. Enforcement squad. At the security checkpoint, 4 cops in immaculate white uniforms were inspecting IDs and faces. Ryan growled, yanking Vanra back behind a column. "They have." The Vanra's fingers clenched around his checkpoint cover. What should we do, Ryan? Mind racing. They looked about. The maintenance access passages might get around the checkpoint, but they'd require an Ryan Mercer. Is that you? The voice came from behind you. Employee badge to enter. Ryan looked over and saw Grey, a massive Taurian dock worker with leathery grey hair. Ryan had repeatedly fixed the atmospheric regulators in the Taurian quarter with skin and 4 enormous arms. Ryan admitted to having to stay up late to make sure the humidity levels were ideal for their delicate hides. Grex? Taurian's nostrils flared as he gazed at him casually. Good to see you. You smell of adrenaline and fear, he said plainly between Ryan and Vonra. And your companion? His big in order to spot one so far away from the Vonra Lumidian rare. Eyes were focused on home worlds. Ryan stated cautiously. We're just trying to catch a transport, but it appears that there is more security today. A low rumbling came from Grex's chest as his eyes went to the Vexillian officers, the Tarian equivalent of a mocking Vasilians, who always think their rules are more important than. He glanced back at Ryan and said, You adjusted the atmospheric controls in my last winter, Ryan. You came to your daughter's nursery even though the other technicians claimed it was too small a task to prioritize. Shrugged. Yes, Greg agreed. It was the right thing to do, in a thoughtful voice. Wait here before Ryan. Was he straightened to his full, stunning height? Could react. Grex stooped toward a gathering of dock workers, including some humans and a mix of Taurans and Arcturans. What's happening? Vonra asked during a quick, heated exchange that involved a lot of gestures at the security checkpoint. Ryan muttered, I'm not sure. And a moment later, there was a disturbance close to a container crashed at the cargo processing area, spilling what looked to be live port security, and the Vexillian officials hurried to contain the issue as soon as possible as the cargo was writhing across the floor. Passengers screamed and leaped aside as the gelatinous animals bounced in all directions. A Grex reappeared. With a tinge of humor, he described Ryan's side galnids. They are harmless, but superb. Distractions arrive. He ushered them through a service door and into the austere, functional tunnels of the maintenance halls that avoid the spaceport's public areas. Other document workers gave Grey a nod as they went past, blatantly disregarding. Why are you helping us? Ryan questioned Vonra and Ryan as they rushed forward. Because I remember kindness, Grex said. Just said. And because I hate Vexillian bureaucracy. They didn't give me my cousin's condition was statistically unlikely to improve after receiving treatment once, and he passed away while waiting for. You knew not the elegant passenger, but a tough cargo hauler sat in a smaller landing bay as they emerged. The main terminal's warships, but a workhorse ship that has been patched and scarred. From years of hard duty, Grizz persisted in saying, Captain Hardy's waiting for you. A figure showed up at the ship's loading dock as though they were in line. Ramp, a 50-something human man with military shorts, salt and pepper hair, and the weathered visage of someone he wore a worn-out flight jacket with fading insignia that Ryan recognized as Earth, and he had seen too much sun on too many worlds. These are passengers, Gra, the captain said to his Alliance Special Forces. Yes, sir. The ones Kazara mentioned. Captain Hardy's voice was gruff and baritone, astute. Grey eyes swiftly evaluated them, saying, Well, don't just stand there. The Vexillians will realize they've been tricked. Any James Hardy, the former captain, gave Ryan and Vanra a terse nod as they ran up the ramp. Minute now. Now, a modest cargo transporter, EA Special Forces welcomes the tenacious Vanra here. Ryan Mercer. I appreciate you saving it, Hardy interrupted. But not. Unfortunately, Gree, we're square against the Taurian in 3 minutes for our launch window. Good man. Hardy clasped one of Grey's and nodded. Cargo's loaded manifest is clean. Huge shoulders. See you in 2 weeks. Hardy closed the loading as Grex left. Ramp and motion for Vonra and Ryan to follow him to the bridge, which is a little area, containing a combination of contemporary holographic screens and antiquated tactile controls. Strap in, he said, Slipping, Ryan climbed into the pilot's seat and said, "Takeoff can be rough in this old girl." Securing the harness on her slim figure, Van Wright slid into one of the passenger seats. Their faces were close, and when the turmoil of their escape subsided, her turquoise eyes, which were filled with both excitement and dread, met his. Ryan confessed, "I didn't even know they were my friends." And she whispered, "You have remarkable friends." Hardy's voice cut through the awareness, saying, "So Kazara tells me you need to get to the deep sea vents. Europa isn't exactly a place for tourists." "It's for her treatment," Ryan said. "The compounds in the algae there can stabilize her because she has stellar cascade syndrome." Condition Hardy looked back at Vonra, his face gradually softening. The typical medical concept of the Vexillians is devoid of He returned to the controls with a certain empathy. "You're lucky. I don't just deliver to Europe. I have permission to set up research stations close to the vents. The ship is under military contracts, roared to life beneath them, their engines humming deeply and resonantly." When Ryan questioned the Vexillian authorities, Hardy's mouth curled into a half smile. He flicked a number of switches. "And I don't mind a few medical bureaucrats, because I smuggled immigrants during the Iran War. In addition, we fall under the jurisdiction of the Earth Alliance once we break atmosphere, and I still have friends in high locations." The ship accelerated with unexpected grace for such a practical vessel as it rose easily from the docking bay. Ryan watched the spaceport drop away from the metropolis beyond the viewport. It shrank until it was only a pattern of lights on the planet's curve, and 3 days before, Europa Hardy declared, "I have." The guest quarters aren't luxurious, but they're private, and the ship broke atmosphere. There's even a small medical bay if you need it. Ryan reached for Vanra's hand, discovering her brightness had unleashed the focus he hadn't realized he was carrying, glowed with relief. "We made it," she said, as tiny patterns of light danced over her skin where their fingers linked. "The first step," he whispered softly, and she nodded, her eyes reflecting the now visible stars. Thank you, Ryan, for everything." Hardy cleared his throat through the viewport. "I'll show you to your quarters. Then I suggest," he said with a knowing expression in his aged eyes. "I can tell you've had a rough night because you both get some sleep." The persistence accommodations were modest, but functional. A tiny cabin with a double bunk and little room for storage, and Ryan had just completed teaching Vonra how to operate the shower controls in a small private restroom when the ship's Hardy's rough voice said, "Merc, meet me in the galley when you're situated." "Got something," Ryan discovered the captain in the ship's small galley 20 minutes later, nursing a mug of what in outer space. Hardy pointed to a pot on what smelled like actual coffee, a luxury. "One of the benefits of being semi-retired, Ryan, the heating element. Help yourself. Grew the beans on my own plot on Mars. You said you had something to tell me." And Hardy's wrinkled face grew as he poured himself a mug and savored the delicious flavor. Somberly, he took a tiny holographic projector out of his jacket pocket and used a practice to turn it on. A stunning extraterrestrial woman with shimmering eyes emerged in 3 dimensions. Ryan was slightly reminded of Andre by the woman's delicate features and blue-green skin, but it was obvious that she was of a different species. Nyella Hardy added in a different tone, "My wife and I have been together for 15 years, prior to a Vexillian medical board ruling that her heart condition wasn't suitable for." When Ryan looked at the picture and realized, "I'm sorry, she was Kalian has a distinct energy, yet a similar physiological constitution to Lydians. When Kazara called me." Hardy's fingers moved in a familiar and trained manner along the projector's edge. "I couldn't say no to you two. It felt like the universe was giving me another shot." Inner Ryan asked quietly, "How did bureaucracy happen?" "Forms and procedures." Hardy's jaw tightened when I discovered cost-benefit assessments, alternative therapy, but it was too late. He turned off the projector and tucked it away, cautiously back into his pocket. "For this reason, I'm asking you to Not squander time when you discover something unusual. And you grasp onto this universe with both hands. Ryan nodded, comprehending the weight of Hardy's counsel. Although we've only been friends for a few days, it feels. Hardy grinned vaguely. Yeah, that's how it was. As if he had known her for ages. Something about these links between them burns. With Niella as well, he shrugged. Brighter, faster. Scientists have theories about complementary energy patterns or something like that. Did you have difficulties while you were together, Hardy? Is what I felt genuine. Laughed out loud. And it's true that there are cultural misconceptions that drive you crazy. Physical differences to navigate. And both of our species raised a lot of eyebrows at his expression. Became serious once more. But it was worthwhile since. She helped me understand the cosmos. Ryan absorbed this with fresh eyes, and I would do anything for another day of that. Recalling Vonra's waiting in their cabin and the quick bond that had developed between them. One more thing. Kazara sent this Syed to inform you that it's a temporary solution, and Hardy added, reaching for a little medical case on the counter. Stronger than you, a stabilizer for her condition could be helpful till we get to Europa. Ryan agreed to the case. Thank you so much for everything. Hardy waved him away. Return to her and Mercer. What's going on between you? 2. Try not to overthink things. There are some things in this universe that don't require an explanation. Ryan discovered Vanra curled on the bunk with her luminescence flickering irregularly when he got back to their cabin. Vanra's respiration came in shallow gas and her pale brow was beaten with sweat. He hurried to her side, feeling alarmed. What's going on? Energy. Fluctuation. She controlled her tight voice, and Ryan bungled worse than before. With his trembling hands, Hardy prepared the injection for the medical case, which should help Kazara send it. Her suffering appeared to be somewhat reduced by the medication, but the unpredictable pulsing of light beneath her skin persisted. Ryan, she muttered to Ryan as he grasped her hand, feeling powerless as tremors tore through her thin body. His turquoise eyes found his. Our connection stabilized in another way. Before comprehension set in. You mean when we nodded? She blushed, a light shade of blue, adding color to her cheeks. The energy we share is more powerful than any. Ryan carefully moved a lock of white hair away from her face while giving her medication. Are you? Yes, she inhaled. Such relationships are sacred. Among my people. Mending. When two energies fully align, they reinforce one another. With his heart racing, Ryan leaned in closer. Do we resonate perfectly? He asked. Vanra reached up and pulled him down to her, where a now familiar current surged between them where their flesh met. More intense than previously. Her skin's luminous patterns instantly changed from irregular, pulses to waves of harmony that emanated from every point of touch, and what transpired went beyond bodily intimacy. It was a sharing of life force and a communion of energies that changed them both. For Ryan, it seemed as though, for a minute, Vanra's alien viewpoint became his own, and he felt her spirit seeping into him. The areas where she spoke were brimming with the unadulterated energy of human passion and physicality. They lay intertwined, after their own energy failed, achieving the ideal balance. The tiny hut was lit by Vonra's skin's constant bright glow. Strong, healthy patterns that spoke of recovery and connection replaced the chaotic flickers of disease. Ryan looked for words, but Vonra ended her voice this time. She stroked the line of his jaw, feeling stronger than she had in days and more complete. Even when we're not touching, I can still feel you with my delicate fingers. Echo of your energy within me. Ryan became aware that he sensed a cozy presence as well. Is that normal? He asked himself, feeling a sense of Vandra that transcended the bodily. No, she acknowledged, her eyes wide with astonishment. Even among my own kind, it's rare. A lasting reverberation. She paused. There's another thing. Surprising. What is it? Venra grabbed his hand and gently laid it on her stomach. He felt a faint vibration that was more defined and clear than the energy patterns he had become used to. A new energy signature, she muttered in an awe-filled voice. Created. From our resonance, she said, and Ryan's eyes grew wide as realization. You mean? Yes. Her brightness shone with happiness. Ryan gasped when he realized that our energies had brought forth fresh life. Child, half Lumidian, half human. Something that ought to have been the result of impossible, but in some way, their special bond had gone beyond those restrictions. I didn't. I don't believe he started, nor did I, she added quietly. Although crosses are quite uncommon, our resonance is unmatched by anything I've ever seen. Her gaze swept across his face. Ryan's astonishment was replaced by a worried. He pulled her close to him in a fit of ferocious joy and protection, his heart racing. Displeased. God, no. I am, with feelings too complicated to describe. He made a sound of laughter. In utter amazement, I'm astonished, frightened, and ecstatic. He put his forehead to Vanra's luminescence surged with joy, indicating that we will need that algae more than ever. The icy surface of Europa shines beneath a persistent, like a huge stone of blue-white ice. Ryan could see Jupiter's enormous shape looming over the sky via the viewport. The moon's glacier plains are illuminated by a dim amber glow from swirling storms. Hardy declared, approaching Europa Research Station Alpha, as his fingers danced over the controls. And we've got a problem. The automated notification, attention approaching vessel Europa Research, sounded on the communication system. All docking requests are denied at Station Alpha, which is quarantined by the Vexillian Health Authority. Maintain a minimum level of safety 5 kilometers away, Hardy muttered obscenities. The velocity of the Vexillians must have foreseen our arrival at Ryan's fear, clenching in my gut. Can we try another station? All 3 study stations on the same network are all Hardy's worn faces, and if one is locked down, they're all resolve. However, during the Orion conflict, I didn't smuggle migrants by accepting no. Instead, he opened a Khazar. Are you reading me? The Arcturan's feline face emerged on the communication system's encrypted channel. Loud and clear screen, Captain. I assume you've had issues with the Vexillian quarantine. Need alternatives. This is concerning. Khazara's whiskers twitched in worry. I've been keeping an eye on Vexillian communications, so this news wasn't totally unexpected. Ryan, your Lumidian friend, has piqued their interest. Why? Inquired, turning to face Vandra, who was standing in the bridge's entrance with one hand resting protectively on her stomach. Since what you two have done should be biologically impossible, a human Lumidian conception, Khazara stated solemnly, Vexillians want to study you both, especially the child Ryan, which goes against all we know about xenobiology. Drew closer to Vonra in a protective manner. That's not happening, Khazar. Agreed, so I've taken the initiative to get in touch with some former co-workers. There's an independent research vessel outside of Vexillian control that is presently investigating thermal vents in the southern hemisphere of Europa. Dr. Mira Hamish, the principal scientist, is an old acquaintance who dislikes Vexillian. Hardy nodded in agreement, saying, Send me the locations, and we'll make. 3 hours later, the persistent lingered over a huge fissure in the cold surface of Europa, a black wound in the Curiosity, an independent research vessel, floated in the liquid water beneath the ice's lights in a white landscape, discernible in the shadows as dim blue pinpricks. They've agreed to help, Hardy clarified as they got ready for the descent. We'll need to dive, but Dr. Hamish will give us access to the vents and the tools we need to harvest the algae. Ryan examined the environmental suit for their submersible, which is intended for study purposes rather than harvesting. A military-grade variant with improved defense against extremely high temperatures and pressures was supplied by Hardy. It's similar to repairing atmosphere regulators, Hardy, having never done a deep sea dive before, just wetter and with more ways to die comforting I don't, he answered with a sweet smile. Vonra walked over to her, her radiance pulsating with worry, knowing Ryan muttered, shouldn't accompany you at all. Ryan and Hardy answered simultaneously. The pressure might hurt you and the child. Ryan continued more gently, grabbing her hands in his. I swear, I'll acquire everything we need. Although the journey to the wonder was uncomfortable, Dr. Hamish, a straightforward woman with silver strands in her black hair, greeted them with a sharp efficiency. The Vexillians are obstinate despite having no authority here, she warned, and we may only have 6 hours. She guided them to the ship's location before they persuaded the Earth Alliance to extend the quarantine to these coordinates. 2 submersibles waiting in a diving bay. Sleek, crab-like vehicles made to the thermal. Vents are located at 3,000 meters and can endure the crushing pressures of Europa's deepest trenches, according to Dr. Hamish. The mineral-rich plumes are where the algae thrives. Samples must be taken from at least 3 separate vents to guarantee genetic diversity. Vanra grabbed Ryan's sleeve as he was ready to join the submersible and said, "Wait," quietly. "Feel that that's your strength," she said, placing his hand on her abdomen where that particular energy signature pulsed regularly. "Ryan dragged her, and your humanity and tenacity will lead you back to us. I won't be long for the plunge." They touched their foreheads, sending energy through their unbreakable tie. Was a terrifying plunge into complete darkness, interrupted only by the submersible lights and the sporadic bioluminescent organism floating by, like spectral guests. At 3,000 meters, the thermal vents emerged, towering black chimneys spewing minerals and superheated water into the icy depths, encircled by phosphorescent algal colonies that emitted an unusually blue-green glow. Ryan meticulously followed Dr. Hamish's directions and took samples from 3 separate vents. As he worked, he sensed Vonra's presence through their relationship, a warm, constant glow that helped him navigate the deafening blackness. Each meter of the seemingly endless ascent brought them closer to safety and the Vexillians' ticking clock. Quarantine. After the Curiosity eventually docked, Ryan hurried the samples to Dr. Hamish's lab, where she collaborated with fascinating, she said, as she examined, with concentrated intensity to extract and stabilize the compounds Vonra needed. The effects of these substances go beyond simply alleviating symptoms. They also rewrite the damaged energy pathways. This could be a long-term remedy if used properly. A proximity alarm went off. As we were about 15 minutes away, Hardy's voice could be heard over the intercom on the Vexillian enforcement craft. "Must relocate," Dr. Hamish gave Ryan a sealed container. The 3 treatments dosages should permanently stabilize her and the infant. Her eyes grew softer. "It is a biological miracle that you 2 have made. I will take care of them, Ryan." As they broke the surface of the promise, the trip back to the Persistent was a haze of stress and anxiety. Ryan was able to climb through the ice fissure and reach the ocean beneath Europa. Observe the Vexillian ship cutting close to a sleek white predator against the black of space. As they docked, they said, "Everyone aboard now." After arriving safely on the bridge, Hardy used Jupiter's powers to perform a sequence of moves that Ryan could only characterize as magical, tremendous gravity to propel them out of Europa at a pace that was too fast for the Vexillian ship to match. "They'll follow." As they charted a path to avoid the Jovian system, Hardy issued a warning. "But I know certain people in the Earth Alliance will get you somewhere safe." Ryan gave them the first dosage of the medication made from algae in their cabin. Her radiance fully stabilized the patterns beneath her skin, streaming with light, creating an instantaneous and stunning impression. "It's working," she gasped, her eyes wide with amazement. "I can." Ryan, who was sitting next to her on the bunk, felt a wave of comfort as he said. Dr. Ryan asked, "And the child?" Hamish replied, 3 doses should cure you permanently." Put his palm over hers on her stomach, feeling the small life growing there through their relationship. "It's stronger now. Distinctive energy signature that perfectly combines Lumidian luminosity and human life. The youngster is doing well. told her that I was growing stronger every minute as Vonra's eyes welled up with happy tears when I was left. Outside the hospital, I believed my life was coming to an end, but it was only getting started. A human guy who took an alien to a veterinarian because he couldn't stand to touch his face. You saved me. Ryan grinned as he recalled that fateful night, which seemed like a lifetime ago. It was the best choice I've ever made. Several months later, Venra gave birth to a daughter who was the ideal combination of human, and with Vanna's glowing skin and Ryan's black hair, they called her Lumidian Kazara, who came from New Phoenix to help, represented Nova, the bright new star in their life, declared her the healthiest hybrid I've ever seen at birth. I don't think I've seen many Captain Hardys who gave the infant a little version of his former military jacket, which had become a constant in their life. When she's prepared to explore the skies, he replied with a harsh, unusual expression in eventually, the Vexillian Health Authority had conceded in the face of Earth Alliance defense and the unquestionable proof that their resource-poor patient was not only alive, but had also given birth, believed to be biologically impossible when Ryan held his baby and observed the delicate. He was astounded by how a pattern of light beneath her skin responded to his touch and his feelings. He hadn't only saved Vonra that evening, he had found a link that had transformed everything, that went beyond the chilly calculations of efficiency and species biology. "What are you thinking?" Vonra inquired, her turquoise eyes gleaming with joy as she observed Ryan's smile. Their mother-child, father-child bond is ringing in perfect harmony, and I'm considering that the best medical care isn't always about cutting-edge technology or chilly efficiency. Seeing someone's value while everyone else has sacrificed Venra's humanity's greatest gift to the universe is luminosity heightened with love. Now what is that? Ryan asked. The rejection. The obstinate conviction that everyone deserves a chance. As Nova's little fingers, she continued quietly, to accept limitations. Curled up against him, Ryan was persuaded that some things were worth every danger and sacrifice, and that sometimes the most surprising answers result in the greatest miracles when conventional knowledge fails.